Baghdad reeling after multiple bombings killed at least 69 people today. They are the latest retaliation by ISIS as Iraqi forces battle the Islamic State to reclaim territory in the north. And as world leaders meet in Vienna to discuss the way forward in Syria. Let's talk about all that with Jonathan Schanzer, Vice President of Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a former terrorism analyst at the Treasury Department. Thanks for joining us. You know, when you look at the details of today's three horrific attacks, one was in a busy outdoor market. It was a roadside bomb followed up by a female suicide bomber. It seems like they're really targeting civilian areas and civilians. Why is that?
Well, I think we're seeing a little bit of retribution right now for the involvement of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps in Syria, as well as Hezbollah, which is an Iran proxy in Syria. So there's a lot of fear right now about the kind of damage that Iran and its entire network is doing across the region. One gets a sense that Sunni jihadist groups are really looking for some payback.
You hear the rhetoric coming out of Washington, and Greg Palcott highlighted some of it about the amount of territory that's being taken back. But the Pentagon saying only 5% of ISIS territory in Iraq has been recaptured in the past 5 months, and really no change in Syria. What do you think the truth is?
I think that we have not done enough. I mean, I think, you know, we have the Pentagon right now bragging about thousands of bombs that have been dropped on ISIS-controlled territory, but I think that they probably equal what was dropped in the first 3 or 4 days of the war in Iraq, for example, in 2003. This has been an extremely surgical campaign, and not one that I think has really done significant damage to ISIS. And I think the fact that it continues to exist today, you know, months and months after that campaign began, I think is testament to that.
It always brings you back with what should we do now? And listening to Defense Department Secretary Peter Cook yesterday, here was his idea. Let's listen. I'll get your reaction.
If the Iraqi security forces were able to secure Rukba, it would be a significant step forward in the fight against ISIL, and a significant step in terms of being able to cut off that flow from the Jordanian border from west to east towards Baghdad.
Seems similar to what we've been hearing all along. I mean, we're always trying to cut off routes, cut off supplies. Is that even possible, what he's talking about, in your opinion?
Of course it is. I mean, I think the real question is, are we ready to cut off the head? I mean, you know, Raqqa is essentially the capital. It's the forward base of ISIL. Then you have the base that is along the Turkish border. These are areas that need to be destroyed. They don't need to be degraded. They don't need to be cut off. They need to be destroyed. And I think what we have right now is an administration that lacks a policy of destruction of ISIS. And I think this is really the heart of the matter.
So what is it? I mean, how do you do that? What would be the way to do that? Would that be many forces on the ground, a much more aggressive effort? Does it have to be forces on the ground, in your opinion?
I don't think it has to be forces on the ground. I think that there probably needs to just be a more concerted bombing campaign. I think targeted assassinations, more of what we've been doing. I think we've been trying to get at only the cream of the crop in terms of the targets that we've been able to assess, and I think that more needs to be done. If you don't want to put boots on the ground, you're going to have to bomb more from above.
So why do you think the administration isn't willing to do that? Because it seems like in the past what they've been afraid of is committing ground troops, and you're talking about a solution that doesn't involve that. So why don't they do it?
I'm not sure. I mean, look, there's also the idea of safe havens and no-fly zones, which are also ways of not putting troops on the ground. There's also the empowering of the Kurds, which I think we could do more of. I think that the general fear right now is this administration getting involved in another major Middle East war. Yeah. And so any escalation, I think, is something that the president is very fearful of.
We know where the candidates, it seems, stand between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton on this. Some people echo back that they think Hillary Clinton is more hawkish, more aggressive than President Obama. Do you buy that?
Look, I think that her rhetoric seems to imply that she's a bit more centrist. I mean, this is a president right now who's just, I mean, is phobic of getting involved in the Middle East. I think if you look at the Clinton presidency under Bill Clinton, you know, and not that that's necessarily
I was going to say, why would we even bother doing that? Because that's not the same thing at all.
It's not, but at least you had a willingness to engage militarily, and I think you didn't see Hillary being uncomfortable with that. I think the real question question, though, right now is whether the rhetoric that we see the Democratic Party engaged in about who's more progressive, I think whether that wins out is the real question right now, because you have a segment of the American left that is in complete support of the president's foreign policy.
Well, some would say that it would be more accurate to look at the current president's foreign policy, since she was Secretary of State there, rather than hearkening back to her husband's administration. But interesting stuff. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate your expertise. John.
Pleasure.